One of the most surprising and relatable poems in George Herbert's collection, The Temple, The Collar, is an exercise in self-persuasion. The speaker of the poem is trying to convince himself of something. I've talked about how poems are journeys, how they begin in one state of mind and often lead us to a new or surprising state of mind. This poem is a good example of that. We begin with the speaker fed up with Christian life, and at the end, he convinces himself to give up his Christian service, and then right at the end, something dramatic happens. As a lyric poem, this shows Herbert's art of the surprise ending. The poem's called The Collar. Of course, we immediately think of perhaps the collar of an enslaved person or of a dog, but it also has this phonetic similarity with collar, the psychological humor of anger. And so this poem is very angry, so it's got that layer as well. When we come to the end, we'll find that this title has even an additional meaning. I struck the board and cried, no more, I will abroad. That is, I will go abroad. What, shall I ever sigh and pine? My lines in life are free, free as the road, loose as the wind, and large as store. Speaker, the lyrical I, strikes the board or the table and makes this surprising speech act, this declaration of resolve. I will abroad, I'll go away. What, will I ever sigh and pine? My lines in life are free, free as the road. And here again is this line which comes up in George Herbert's poetry quite a bit. We've seen it in A Reef. Here it means not just the lines of life, but also the lines of poetry, as it often does. We even saw it in The Flower. And notice this steady iambic pentameter, my lines and life are free, and then this sudden shift with a trochee, free as the road. And he's trying to make a point that the lines themselves are free verse, free lines. They are not regulated by a tight pattern as many of his poems are. Shall I be still in suit? Shall I be in complaint? Remember this word from redemption? Many of his poems are calling back to the other poems in the collection. Shall I still be in suit? Have I no harvest but a thorn to let me blood? So perhaps this speaker is a farmer, or perhaps it's just figural. He's not getting a harvest. All he's getting is a thorn, which is going back to Genesis 3:18, when the earth was cursed to bring forth thorns and thistles. So there is a theological valence here. To let me blood, bloodletting, here we've moved from the agricultural to the medicinal. This was a remedial practice in which a person's vein was opened and they would bleed out, and this would help reduce the fever, so it was believed. So now this thorn, which his crops or his fields were yielding, now become the agent of remedy. And not restore what I have lost with cordial fruit or comforting fruit. And he's asking these rhetorical questions. Shall I ever be in suit? Shall I ever sigh and pine? Shall I ever get something in exchange for all of this pain? And he's questioning and thinks, well, sure, there was wine. And notice this enjambment. Enjambment is when a line ends without punctuation. It causes the mind to carry this half sense because the sense is incomplete. The verbal event has not completely taken place. Sure, there was wine before my sighs did dry it. And this is significant with the tone. There was corn before my tears did drown it. And so he's allowing that enjambment to kind of carry it forward. Well, yes, there was wine. Yes, there was corn, but my sighs dried it and my tears drowned it. Is the year only lost to me? Another rhetorical question. In this year, it's referring to the harvest year, the entire cycle, which would be completed in autumn when the wheat was harvested. Have I no bays to crown it, bay leaves for a victor's crown? No flowers, no garlands gay, all blasted, all wasted? Now he's presenting a case to himself to try to persuade himself to give up this life and to exchange his old life for something new. And notice the self-dialogue. I mean, his poems often trace these ineffable motions of the spirit and mind. He answers himself, not so, my heart, but there is fruit, and thou hast hands. Recover all thy sigh-blown age on double pleasures. So throw away all the pain that you've got. You can leave this life and exchange it for pleasures. Leave thy cold dispute of what is fit and not. This dispute harkens back to the suit. Forsake thy cage, thy rope of sands. which petty thoughts have made, and made to thee good cable, to enforce and draw, and be thy law. And moving up, while thou didst wink and would not see. Thy law, he's saying, forsake. In a sense, apostatize. Give up this practice of Christian religion which is yielding no fruit, and be your own law, while thou didst wink and would not see. And then look what happens. He's actually convinced himself here. He says, I will. Away, take heed. I will abroad. It's as though he begins striking the board impulsively, saying, I will abroad, but it seems like he hasn't really convinced himself and has taken a bit of convincing up until this point. He says, call in thy death's head there. A death's head was a skull that some academics would keep on a desk or in a bookcase to remind them of death. It was a way to keep you humble. It was a way to remember that you would die. He says, call it in, put it up. George Herbert, by the way, was an academic. I do think that this is, in a sense, confessional, but I will not interpret the lyrical eye to mean explicitly George Herbert. This is a speaker, in a way, a role offered to the reader. Call in thy death's head there, he says. Tie up thy fears. Live it up. He that forbears to suit and serve his need deserves his load. Now notice the little play here with serve and deserve. This is a figure of polyptoton, which Herbert, as a rhetorician of Cambridge, was aware of. And he's playing here with that root word serve. To suit or complain and serve his need. Deserve, which of course is in the sense of deserving something as a reward, but also to unserve or to deconvert, de-serve. No longer serve, but live free. So here he convinces himself. And then we have the voice of this stolid narrator coming in. But as I raved, and grew more fierce and wild at every word, here comes the turn. Methought I heard one calling, Child. And I replied, My Lord. Total change here in relationship to God. The self was speaking to the self, trying to convince the self to give up the life, perhaps the ministry in Herbert's context, but the Christian life more broadly, the law, the rope of sands, not getting anything in exchange, and then all of a sudden he hears that one word of a caller. So this is the third valence that the title takes on, not just the slave caller, not just the caller of humor, of anger, but the one who calls, one calling child, which totally changes the relationship that was described by the self in this dialogue proceeding. The relationship was not familial. It was not one of adoption. It was not one of father and son or father and child. Here that one word has just totally changed the perception. The devotional relationship just snaps back into where it's supposed to be. And many of George Herbert's poems do this. And the hinge here has to do with that relational pivot. The self seems to be saying this is all service, and then the caller is putting that relationship back into one that is familial within the context of the Christian doctrine of adoption. So a great poem, a great example of how Herbert's dramatic voice is similar to Donne's at times, but it's also different. Donne's speakers do not often undergo a transformation. They are engaged in persuasion, but predominantly, generally speaking, they don't end with the speaker's sudden change of mind. So I hope you enjoyed this poem. It's certainly one of Herbert's best and one of the best beloved poems of Herbert's, The Temple, and I will see you all in the next video.